Welcome, vintage Star Wars fans. In this video, we're taking a look at a peculiar set of storage containers from the early 1980s. Sometimes the containers tell just as much of a story as the collectibles inside them. That's why today, I'm showcasing a set of vintage Star Wars tins dating back to The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. A few of these haven't been opened since I was 13, so this may turn into a bit of a time capsule. Equal parts Star Wars history and personal nostalgia. That said, the contents may not be any more exciting than belly lint. Either way, we're going to find out. But before we dive in, let's explore a bit of the history behind these tins. While I certainly don't own every type, I'm committed to showcasing the ones in my collection. Understanding the origin of these peculiar little storage items is surprisingly fascinating. It all began with a company called Metal Box Limited, established in 1921 in the United Kingdom. Formed through the amalgamation of several businesses specializing in canning and printing, the company originally focused on everyday goods like biscuits, tea, and tobacco. Over the decades, it expanded its operations and became a leading packaging supplier to major corporations such as Unilever, Nestle, Heinz, and Shell. In the 1980s, Metal Box Limited diversified into building supplies, broadening its market reach. During this period, the company also produced a range of collectible tins, including some featuring Star Wars themes. Notably, in 1980, Metal Box Limited released a series of tins commemorating The Empire Strikes Back, with designs showcasing iconic characters and scenes from the film. At the time, Star Wars was more than just a film series, it was a cultural juggernaut, with merchandise flying off the shelves at light speed. For companies like Metal Box Limited, the phenomenon presented a golden opportunity. Though better known for industrial and consumer packaging, the company stepped into the pop culture spotlight with a series of collectible tins that aligned perfectly with the excitement surrounding The Empire Strikes Back. These Star Wars tins have since become sought-after collectibles, reflecting Metal Box Limited's legacy in combining quality packaging with popular culture. Although detailed records of the licensing agreement between Metal Box Limited and Lucasfilm aren't publicly available, the broader trend at the time helps fill in the picture. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Lucasfilm actively licensed the Star Wars brand to a wide array of manufacturers, from toys to school supplies. Given Metal Box Limited's prominence in the packaging industry and its reputation for high-quality production, the company was a natural fit to create officially licensed Empire Strikes Back tins. While Metal Box was based in the UK, their products found their way into international markets, including the United States, highlighting the global scope of Star Wars merchandising during its peak. A few years later, when it came time to market products for Return of the Jedi, the torch passed to a different player entirely, an American company called Cheinco, which produced its own line of collectible tins. Much like Metal Box before them, Cheinco saw the value in merging everyday utility with pop culture appeal, creating tins that echoed the energy and imagery of the final chapter in the original trilogy. Today, these Star Wars tins not only serve as functional items, but also as nostalgic artifacts, reflecting a unique collaboration between a leading packaging company and a cultural phenomenon. So now that we know the legacy behind these tins, it's time to take a closer look at my personal collection, one tin at a time. I'll be showcasing and opening each one, sharing a bit of history where I can, and walking you through how I clean, preserve, and safely store them for the future. Think of it as part archaeology, part archive work, Star Wars style. To get us started, let's take a look at the Empire Strikes Back coin bank. I originally used this tin just as it was intended, to store spare change, but over time, it ended up holding a variety of random odds and ends. What makes this piece especially unique is its shape. An octagon with 8 panels, each featuring a different character. Unlike the other tins in this collection, the artwork here isn't based on stills from the film. Instead, it draws from the bold, stylized look of Star Wars Marvel comics, with each character captured mid-action in a way that sparks the imagination. All the key heroes are present: Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Yoda, C-3PO, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Chewbacca, and R2-D2, each given their own moment in this vivid illustrated tribute to the galaxy far, far away. And now let's see what's inside. I haven't opened this in years, so what's rattling around in there is a bit of a mystery, even to me. Well, it turns out the mystery inside, is Pac-Man. Three little erasers, Pac-Man himself and two ghosts, all made by Bally Midway, dated 1980. These were probably tossed in here during my arcade-obsessed years, back when Pac-Man fever was just as strong as Star Wars mania. They may be small, but they're a perfect snapshot of that era, when even your school supplies came with pop culture built in. I'm not exactly sure, but I think these came free when you placed an order through the weekly reader book club. And just beneath the erasers, something a little older and a bit more personal. A single wheat penny from 1945, along with a handwritten note from my mother. The note simply reads, "Collector's item. Wheat penny. Don't spend." It is a simple gesture, but it says so much. Even as a kid, I was already holding on to things that had meaning, and thanks to my mom, I was learning to recognize what was worth saving. The penny itself doesn't appear to be worth much in dollars, but with the note still beside it after all these years, it's priceless. My mom wasn't a collectibles expert, but she had a good eye and enough common sense to recognize items that might be worth saving. Next up is a smaller tin from the Empire Strikes Back line, measuring about 2.5 inches wide and 4 inches tall. This one features 4 striking panels, 3 stills taken directly from the film, and 1 concept-style image that appears to be out of a Ralph McQuarrie painting. The imagery wraps cleanly around the body of the tin, set against a speckled starfield background that gives it a clean but classic sci-fi feel. The characters featured on this tin are Yoda, Darth Vader, R2-D2, and the Probot, or, as some fans like to call it, the Imperial Probe Droid. Each one is framed in its own panel, creating a nice balance between familiar faces and ominous technology from the film. One detail worth pointing out, Darth Vader's panel shows a few scratches, likely caused by rubbing against something in storage over the years. And honestly, this is exactly why I'm taking the time to go through my collection piece by piece. Some wear and tear was inevitable. But this channel isn't about showcasing a perfect collection. It's about honoring the one I actually have, warts and all. No matter what condition I find them in, every piece will be handled with care and preserved with the appreciation it deserves. And just like the coin bank before it, this one had something rattling around inside, small remnants of childhood, quietly waiting to be rediscovered. Let's take a look. So it looks like we have a piece of a Millennium Falcon model kit and a speeder bike foot pedal also from a model kit. It will be interesting to see if I still have the models packed away somewhere. The rest appears to mostly be random junk. Some old screws, thumbtacks, and an old key ring. Probably the most interesting thing in here are these fake pupils I bought years ago. They were either intended for the eyes of my Jabba the Hutt creation or possibly for Salacious Crumb. Maybe not this exact pair, since they came from a bag with multiple sizes, but definitely from the same batch. Strange little bits to hang on to, I know, but they're part of a bigger story. Each of these tins captured more than just characters or movie scenes. They quietly carried pieces of my younger self. Let's keep going. This next tin is a medium-sized square measuring about 3 inches across and just half an inch deep. It features Chewbacca, trudging through the snowdrifts of Hoth. Unlike the others, this design wraps around a single flat surface. There are no true sides to showcase additional character art, just a lone Empire Strikes Back logo printed on the bottom. At this point, the only thing left to do is open it up and see what's inside. Looks like I found the original money order receipt for my Revenge of the Jedi teaser one-sheet, the one I never actually received. I talked about this story back in episode 11, and while the poster never showed up, this receipt does help support the legitimacy of my Revenge of the Jedi cast and crew patch. And here we've got a proof of purchase cutout from a Star Wars action figure. These were always worth holding on to. You never knew when a new mail-away offer might pop up. And tucked beneath that proof of purchase, something a little more personal. 3 miniature spaceships I built as a kid alongside my best friend, the same friend who earned a fan award from the official Star Wars fan club, which I mentioned back in episode 11. These were part of a little tradition we had, crafting our own starships out of balsa wood and toothpicks. This first one was a battle-damaged ship I imagined would serve a role similar to a Star Destroyer in my own space adventures. After building it, I'd break off sections on purpose to show wear from battle and then use matches to scorch the surface, leaving behind those smoky char marks that gave it a weathered, war-torn look. We were always creating things like this. In fact, we even built our own pinball machines. They didn't have any electronics, of course, but you'd be amazed what you could do with a wooden board, a jackball, a few rubber bands, and some sewing spools for bumpers. Angle the board just right, and you had yourself a fully functioning game. This next one is a freighter I designed after imagining what the Millennium Falcon might look like if it had 2 cockpits, one on each side. Instead of the familiar saucer shape, I went with a more rectangular form, with the engines positioned to balance the overall design. The idea behind the dual cockpits was simple. Depending on which side you were docking from in space, the pilot could choose the most convenient cockpit to use. Looking back, it's amazing how much imagination was packed into just a few inches of space. From battle-worn cruisers to double-cockpit freighters, these little creations were more than just scraps of wood. They were pieces of a much bigger world we were building. Let's move on to the next tin and see what other memories are waiting to be uncovered. This next one is a little smaller, almost like a pillbox, but it still packs plenty of charm. The lid features a snowy scene of Luke Skywalker riding a Tauntaun across the icy plains of Hoth, while the bottom carries the familiar Empire Strikes Back logo. It's built just like the Chewbacca Tin, only scaled down to pocket size. And just like the Chewbacca Tin, the only thing left to do now is open it up and see what's inside. It may be small, but you never know what kind of surprise might be tucked away. Inside, I found a small handful of miniature figures, tiny plastic sculpts that look like they once belonged to various Star Wars model kits. You know, the kind you'd glue into place, whether it was a pilot in a cockpit, a character in a diorama, or someone mid-action. They're not posable, and they're not exactly toys, but they were often the final detail that brought those kits to life. We'll have to take a closer look to see who or what we're dealing with. The first piece I pulled out appears to be Luke Skywalker riding a Tauntaun. It's a small, static figure, probably from a model kit I built as a kid. Next up is what looks like Chewbacca, sculpted in a seated position, most likely intended for the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. And this piece looks like the seat Chewbacca was meant to be attached to, right next to the torso of Han Solo, also in a seated position. Han's missing his head and arms at the moment, but those parts are here too. And here we have none other than Darth Vader himself, instantly recognizable, even at this tiny scale. These last 2 figures appear to be pilots of some kind, though I'm not exactly sure what ships they were meant to fly. The details are there, but the exact roles remain a bit of a mystery. If I had to guess, I'd say these pieces might be from the Hoth Rebel base set, though I can't be completely sure. Those models were always a bit fragile, tough to build and even tougher to keep intact. And while I believe I still have a few tucked away somewhere, I couldn't tell you what kind of shape they're in today. Now the next 2 tins are a bit of a different story. They're long and slim, each about 1/2 inch deep and 7 inches long. One features Yoda, the other Darth Vader, and both have played their part in this collection's history. The Vader tin, for example, wasn't fully latched when I rediscovered it in the box. As I picked it up, the lid popped open, and inside were the very watches featured in episode 20. In a way, that accidental moment ended up shaping that entire video. As a result, there's nothing to showcase inside this tin now, since those watches have already had an entire episode devoted to them. The Yoda tin, on the other hand, does have items inside, but they'll be a better fit for a different theme I plan to explore in a future episode. So for now, we'll just give this tin a proper moment in the spotlight, while its contents wait for their time to shine. Moving on to the next set, we come to the Cheinco collection. These tins offer a different kind of artistry, more painterly and expressive, compared to the sharper, more photographic style of the Metal Box Limited line. The imagery here feels like original artwork, giving each tin a unique personality. First up is a tall, rounded tin with scenes printed on opposite sides, capturing the essence of Return of the Jedi. But it sounds like there's something rattling around inside this one, so once again, let's crack it open and take a look. After a bit of sorting, it looks like we've got a Rebel Snow Soldier from one of the Hoth Micro Collection sets. I know I had all of the Micro Worlds that were released, but I'm not sure what this lone trooper is doing in here, unless he's an extra, which did happen from time to time. Next up is an X-Wing fighter canopy, presumably from a model kit, much like the pieces we found in some of the earlier tins. There are also a few pieces from a Millennium Falcon model kit, easy to recognize thanks to their distinctive design. I must have had parts break off from various models or come loose over time and just tucked them into these tins to keep them from getting lost. The rest is just odds and ends, a few thumbtacks and a couple of mechanical pencil leads, nothing to really write home about. One fun aside about this tin, I never peeled off the price tag from the bottom, and I'm actually glad I didn't because it shows this was purchased at the now defunct Gemco. I used to love going there as a kid. They had a great toy aisle and a solid selection of Star Wars items. And for the final tin, we have this half-inch tall, 3-inch round Jabba the Hutt tin. Like the others in the Cheinco line, it features some great artistry, with Jabba himself prominently displayed on the lid. Unfortunately, this one's empty. No forgotten treasures or bits of junk to reminisce about. Still, I really enjoy having these in my collection. They're unique pieces you just don't come across every day. With all the tins now explored, it's time to give them the care they deserve. After all, these pieces have been through decades of handling, storage, and a little bit of chaos along the way. So before they're packed away again, I'm going to take a moment to clean each one and prep them for long-term preservation. After doing a bit of research, I found that the safest and most effective place to start was with something simple: isopropyl alcohol. It turns out to be a pretty reliable cleaner when it comes to vintage tins. It's strong enough to break down surface grime, fingerprints, and old residue, but gentle enough that it won't strip away the original artwork or damage the finish. So, I took my time, working carefully, rubbing down each tin by hand with a soft cloth or cotton pad. Not scrubbing, just easing off the decades of buildup. It's a slow process, but there's something kind of meditative about it. You get a chance to appreciate all the little details in the artwork and construction that you might normally overlook. Now for the tougher stuff, those stubborn price tag remnants and sticky patches that have been baked onto the surface for 45 years or more. For those, I used a bit of Dawn Power Wash. Just a small spritz on the problem area, let it sit for a few minutes, and then gently worked it off with my thumb. After that, a quick wipe with a paper towel brought everything back to a nice clean finish. Now that everything's been cleaned up and looking its best, the next step is making sure these tins and their contents are preserved and properly stored. Some of these items have already lasted decades, and with just a little care they can hold up for many more. So let's walk through how I'm packing them up for long-term safekeeping. First, I picked up these 5x5 cardboard boxes, just the right size to store most of the tins in this collection. The only exceptions are the 2 long tins, but for those I already had the perfect box saved from some unrelated packing material. Sometimes it pays to hang on to those odds and ends. To help protect the tins from scratches or wear during storage, I picked up some jam tissue paper. It's perfect for wrapping each tin individually, while also providing a soft buffer inside the box. It's a small touch, but one that really helps preserve both the finish and the integrity of the packaging over time. Because these are metal tins and susceptible to rust, I picked up a 50-pack of silica gel packets to help control moisture. Depending on the size of the tin, I placed either 1 or 2 packets inside each container. These are the same kind you've probably seen in product packaging. They quietly do their job, keeping things dry and helping to reduce the risk of rust or corrosion over time. The coin bank, the similarly sized Empire Strikes Back container, and the tall return of the Jedi Tin each fit nicely into their own boxes. The Chewbacca, Luke, and Tauntaun and Jabba tins were individually wrapped and placed together in a single box with layers of softly crumpled tissue in between to prevent contact. As for the long Vader and Yoda tins, they were also wrapped in tissue and stored together in one box, with a cushion of tissue between them to prevent any scuffing during storage. So here they are. Every tin has been cleaned, wrapped, and placed into its own box, each one labeled and organized for long-term storage. Seeing them like this brings a quiet satisfaction. It may not seem like much, but for collectors, this kind of care makes all the difference. It keeps the memories intact and the items protected for years to come. What were once scattered pieces from my childhood are now preserved, labeled, and ready for the next chapter, whatever that may be. One last thing before we wrap up, the final disposition of all the items found inside the tins. I've taken the time to sort everything out. All the Star Wars-related pieces have been sorted together into individual resealable bags, kept safe for future endeavors. The non-Star Wars odds and ends went into their own labeled bags as well, just in case they prove useful down the line. And as for the truly miscellaneous bits, the old thumbtacks, loose screws, and random clutter, those have been properly sorted or discarded. The screws went into my hardware canister and the tacks found a home with the rest of the office supplies. Nothing fancy, but it felt good to give everything a place. I intend to keep all the Star Wars-related items as part of my collection, regardless of their worth or rarity. I'm creating a dedicated miscellaneous storage box for those pieces, and I'll likely be adding to it as I continue to rummage through the rest of my collection. As for the non-Star Wars items like the Pac-Man erasers, they'll be going into a separate vintage miscellaneous box, which I also plan to keep building over time. And that brings us to the end of this tin-filled journey. From the artistry of the designs to the surprise contents inside, each piece told its own little story. And I'm glad I could share that with you. Whether it was a forgotten watch, a stray model part, or just the quiet charm of old packaging, these tins represent more than just collectibles. They're small time capsules from a galaxy far, far away, and from my own past. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, drop a comment, or subscribe if you haven't already. There's plenty more to come as we keep exploring the vintage corners of Star Wars history, one piece at a time. Until next time, may the Force be with you always.